Hey everybody, today I'm talking about Signorie, which is a 2 to 4 player Euro-style board game by What's Your Game. The game takes about 90 minutes to 120 minutes to play and accommodates 2 to 4 players. Now the idea of the game is that we are these patriarchs of these noble Italian families in the 15th century, and we're supposed to be kind of using our sons and daughters to gain kind of political influence by gaining victory points, by marrying off our daughters and kind of training up our sons in different disciplines, and again helping those different noble families all to gain victory points. Now I suppose at the crux of it, the game is a dice drafting game, which is personally one of my favourite gaming mechanisms, but there's quite a bit going on in it, but it all works surprisingly smoothly. So as I said, the kind of crux of it is to draft those dice, and there's going to be I think there's 5 different colours, and depending on the player count there's going to be that number of dice in these different pools that are going to be rolled at the beginning of each round. And then in turn order, you are going to draft from those dice and kind of allocate it onto the corresponding spot on your unique player board. And in each of those spots, you've got 3 different actions you can take. One of them is going to be unique to that spot, and the other 2 are pretty much similar to all the different colours actions you can take. So one of them is simply putting a kind of an upgrade disc, which means that when you take another action of a certain dice colour, you can get like a bonus. So you've got this real kind of like engine building thing that you can kind of invest in and get more and more powerful kind of returns on your dice drafts each round, which is really nice. The other one is to take a corresponding action to what's on the main board, because at the beginning of each round all these different assignment actions are going to get jumbled up and allocated to different spots, and then you can kind of spend your daughters or sons to use those different actions, which can do lots of different things. But again, each of those different colours has a unique action as well, such as gaining money, or sending your sons off to help these different noble houses, or marrying your daughters off, or creating more children, and different things like that. So there's quite a bit going on. The importance of the dice drafting is quite unique to this game, and unlike any other kind of dice drafter I've played, because you are drafting these dice, which are simply they're D6s, but the reason or the thought process behind them is that the higher the number is the kind of bigger discount you get on these different actions. So all the different actions are kind of numbered from, I think it's 2 to 5, and then if you basically take a matching number or a higher number than those action kind of the numbers on those actions, then you're not going to have to pay anything. But if you take a lower number, so say I drafted a die to the value of 3 and put it on my 5 costing action, then I would have to spend the difference of 2 in money. And now you might be thinking, oh, why wouldn't I always take the higher dice actions or the higher die values? It's because at the end of each round, and you can take potentially, or you have the choice to take up to 4 die, or basically if you go over a certain threshold, which is basically 13, a total value of 13, then you don't get quite a powerful bonus at the end of the round. So it's all about managing that kind of, staying under that threshold, but still getting stronger actions and not having to pay too much. Money is a very tight resource in this game, so you can't always take the lower actions, because again, money is hard to come by, and having that kind of flow of coins coming through your family is quite difficult to maintain. So there's quite a lot of balancing act that goes into this one, because you want a steady flow of family members, of daughters and sons. You want the money. You want to stay under that threshold, because again, at the end of that round, you can get a bonus, which can be quite significant. You can either take more money, or you can take one of these kind of predetermined tiles that are going to be lined up at the start of the game. And there's good variability there as well, because I think only 7 are used, and you get 14 tiles with the game. So there's a bit of variability there. And it's nice to know that you can know what's coming up each time, so you know whether you can kind of forsake staying under that threshold or not. And those different bonuses can be such as taking more daughters or sons. It can be like a free, like a diplomatic action. It can be a free action where you marry someone off, or it can be a free upgrade. So lots of different things that you might want at certain times. Additionally, when you do stay under that threshold, you get a new, when you bring a new kind of female into your family to marry off one of your own sons. That means that whenever you kind of use this action that produces more children, then you can roll more dice, which can determine, bring more children into your family. So The interesting thing is as well, when you do produce those family members, you roll these dice, and if it lands on a 1, 2 or 3, you bring in a daughter, or a 4, 5 and 6, you bring in a son. So there's not that kind of perfect information, which is kind of quite thematic in terms of childbirth. You don't always know what sex you're gonna get. But yeah, that's pretty much how the game's going to flow. It's always about drafting that dice, taking the bonus actions you've invested in, and so on. But the game is surprisingly brain-burnery because of the tightness of the resources. As I said, you want that steady flow of daughters and sons, because you're going to be spending them to take those actions by doing the assignment actions. You're also going to be marrying them off to different families, as I said, which can be quite important because and quite tight as well, because when you marry your daughters off, you have to pay a coin basically for each, well, on a kind of upward kind of ramping scale, to these different kind of spots on the board, or to different cities. First it's going to cost 1, then it's going to cost 2, then it's going to cost 3, then it's going to cost 4. But obviously all the players are sharing that pool, so getting in there early is going to be a bit more cost effective. For every coin you spend, you also get 2 victory points, and you also get to allocate that daughter to that city space and potentially take a basically a noble tile, which can be put next to your player board for potential end game scoring. And you're basically trying to collect different noble houses, and if you collect at least 3 at the end of the game, you're going to score the victory points printed on those tiles, which can be quite significant. Additionally, the way that you marry or use your sons is quite similar, except that you are trying to move them up these 3 different tracks. So you've got like the kind of noble track, you've got the military track, and you think you've got like the kind of religious track as well. And the further you move them up, you're trying to get through different thresholds in order to allocate them to those spots. But also, the higher you get, the more kind of victory points you're going to get when you do spend them and send them off to those different cities. And again, take potential noble tiles and add them to your board, depending if you need them or not. The game is very tight in terms of, not only because of its resources, because there's not actually a lot of time to do what you want to do. I suppose typically you're going to draft about 3 dice per round, and there's 7 rounds in the game. But if there's a lot of tiles to collect, if you want to get all those points, you've got to constantly kind of keep your family members climbing up those different kind of discipline tracks, and again it ramps up as the game goes on. But as it ramps on, you are trying to increase your engine as well by investing in these different spots, so that you can get more bang for your buck when you do draft those dice. In terms of your meaningful decisions, there's a lot that goes into this one. Again, just balancing your resources carefully, planning them in order, knowing when to prioritize drafting which dice depending on what your opponent wants as well, because you might want to take 4 actions this turn, but your opponent drafts one of the low dice, and you're stuck with drafting a 6 to take an action that you really want, which obviously really contributes towards that threshold and potentially missing out on the end game bonus. So there's a lot to think about. Raising them up the tracks, to take to the families, making sure that you've got the noble tiles you need. If you only get 2 of those noble tiles, then they're not going to score at the end of the game. So you've got to carefully manage the rate that you're bringing those tiles in to make sure that you've got at least 3 at the end of the game. There's potential to take kind of face down noble tiles as well, which can contribute to the 3 that you need, but don't give you much victory points in return. The constant the board state is in flux because the different assignment actions are juggled up each round, which means that sometimes the male resources are more important than the female ones, or vice versa, which can be quite brain burnery. So there's a lot to think about there. The balance of the game is really good. I mean, there's some really cool different approaches you can take to the game, different engine routes that you can build. So for example, you can invest in ones that whenever you take a certain action, then you'll take a victory point for each kind of male you've got on the board, or ones that just give you money, ones that can kind of give you more family members as you go on. There's a lot to different routes you can take down and things you can invest in, and which is a really nice surprise is that they're all they all are really kind of appetizing. You really want to do them all, which is quite nice. There's no obvious routes or anything like that to take. That you're not going to do the same thing every game, and there's a lot of scope to try different things. Mechanically, the game is surprisingly simple. As I said, it's just drafting that die and putting it on your player board, potentially spending the difference in coins. But the thought process behind it is massive. As I said, there's so much downfall through the dice that you take. So yeah, mechanically and kind of what you're physically doing is very simple, but again, the thought process is massive for all those different reasons that I've touched on. Time investment, the game takes about 90 to 120 minutes to play, which I think is about right. I mean, it doesn't outstay its welcome. You're always engaged, and it feels like a fast game because you want to do so much with so little, which is great. Replayability wise as well, as I said, lots of different routes to try, variable setup. Also with the reward tiles, the noble families are going to come up in different orders. You are trying to, obviously the assignment actions are all juggled up as well, but also at the end of each, after the first 5 rounds, the final 2 rounds have a different kind of reward it gives you, where you are trying to score different things based on the state of the board. So for example, you might score 2 points for every male that you've got on the married or sent off to those different cities, or or maybe 4 points for each female you've got in a different city. So there's different things to focus on and end game kind of goals to work towards. So again, more scope for variability and just a different feeling game each time you play. Interaction wise, it's pretty, although the game is not directly confrontational, there is some real kind of real good interaction here, not only with the dice drafting, which is really strong. I mean, there's some real frustrating moments that you want to take the dice that your other opponent's already taken, and that can leave you really high and dry. There's a very competitive kind of initiative track as well, because being first player in this one is very important, and there is like an action that you can take to move yourself higher on that initiative track, and if you get particularly high on it, then you can get victory points in return. But yeah, being first player is very important, so there's that kind of conflict there, but also getting those earlier spots to marry your daughters off to send your sons off to, and the competition to get those noble tiles or flags on your board as well is very strong, because again, there's limited opportunities to do so. There's only 1 for each city, for a daughter and a son each round. There's going to be natural crossover that players are going to want the same flags. So again, there's a lot of competition there, without being aggressive or kind of take that-ish. There's nothing like that in the game, and nothing that spoils or dampens the feel of the game, but it still remains very competitive. Aesthetically, the game is pretty clean design. There's not loads of artwork or anything like that, but it does look nice. Component wise are all quality. You get nice dice with them. You've got the player boards are very good, and all the iconography is very good as well. There wasn't any confusing iconography. So it was actually pretty simple to digest, but again, the thought and the ripple effect of what you're going to do and the order in which you're going to take your actions is very, very palpable. Theme-wise as well, for a pretty dry Euro game that's set in this kind of age of intrigue, the game, I think, does a great job in kind of injecting that theme into the game. Now, the idea that you're, using your sons to, train in those different disciplines, marrying your daughters off, which was so strong at the time, bringing daughters into your family, it's just really good, and it feels like you are, kind of using your children for that kind of political benefit, which is really good, and again, really kind of it goes just really well with the age, that kind of Borgia theme. It just comes through really well, and I personally really enjoy that. And setup and teardown time as well is really good. There's simply just jiggle up those, as I said, just ruffle up those different assignment tiles, put out a few those noble flags, roll the dice, and you're pretty much good to go. I mean, there's not a lot of setup, and there's a little bit of variance in the kind of player count. Some tiles are taken out and stuff, but nothing too onerous, and it's pretty straightforward. The game has a great ramping up effect, as I said, as you're investing in those different powers. You can really have some powerful turns each round, and again, lots of different routes to take as well. So that progression and arc of the game is really nice, and it doesn't feel static at all. Scalability wise as well, I mean, no matter what player count it is, it feels tight because dice are taken out of the pool depending on the player count, and also the cities are reduced as well depending on the player count. So no matter what you play, it's going to be a tight game, and it's not going to be loosey-goosey, and you can't just do everything you want to do. You're going to be very restricted in what you do each game. And comparison-wise, I mean, although there's a lot of dice drafting games out there, this one does a great job of being different. The dice aren't simply used to do the actions. It's all about the value of that dice. Are you going to use it to not pay anything, or are you going to take the low dice to to pay the difference? But stay under that threshold, more likely to stay under that threshold. So the dice drafting has a completely different feel to it, and the choices aren't obvious. Sometimes you might want the high numbers, sometimes you might want the low numbers. So there's no obvious choices here, which is really good. But overall, this game is fantastic. I mean, I really enjoyed this one. I was recommended it by a viewer actually, and I never played any Watch Your Game games. This is the first one I've tried, but I've heard good things about all their games, and this one just kind of sings praise to that, because I was so impressed with this, and there's not really any faults I can think about it at all. I mean, the only thing, I suppose there could be a little bit of analysis paralysis as players kind of map out their moves, and in a 4-player game, I suppose that can kind of bog the game down a bit, and probably take towards the upper end of that time limit, going pretty closer to that 2-hour limit. But again, it doesn't outstay its welcome. You're always going to be thinking about your own moves. The tension of that dice draft is really good. But yeah, loads of different routes to try. You've got if you like your tracks to climb up, you like managing your resources, this game is going to be for you. It's such a solid Euro game, again, with no real faults to it. Lots of fun, lots of engine building, and loads of satisfying turns. Just a really fantastic game. That is Signorie by Watch Your Game. It gets an excellent verdict from me, and you know what, potential to go even higher than that, because really looking forward to playing this one more and more and more. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.